It is 6 o'clock. We will bring this meeting to order. If everyone would please rise and face the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Throw the wrong words out there.
I know. You messed me up.
Stephanie, would you please go through roll call?
Yes. Member Horning? Here. Member Campbell?
Here.
And welcome to the board, Member Campbell.
Thank you.
Member Bryant? Here. Member Lamug will have an excused absence for the record. Vice Chair Stark?
Here.
Member Jones?
Here.
Chair Clark?
Present.
Member Estill?
Present.
And Member Day? Here. And we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'm always confused as to what opening business there is other than the minutes. I'm assuming there's not any opening business we need to handle, and we can go to the approval of the minutes. Have the members had a chance to review the minutes for the March 8th work session and for the March 8th Historic Preservation meeting minutes? And if so, I'll entertain motions for each.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve. I have a second. Is there any discussion? All right, motion to approve both of the minutes consecutively. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. The minutes are approved. And we will open up into the first item of old business, which was the approval of the HPB Informational Trifold, which I imagine was the discussion of the workshop that I missed.
Yes, so that was the workshop discussion, work session discussion. So if you all want to go ahead and if somebody can move to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the brochure and flyer associated. Second.
I have a motion to approve by Member Stark and a second by Member Jones. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approval of the Informational Trifold signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Your trifold has now been approved.
Wonderful, thank you.
And we'll go on to new business. First item of business is the Certificate of Appropriateness major for 1111 Wisconsin Avenue. You have the floor.
Perfect. So the applicant is requesting approval from the HPB for a C of A to modify the exterior appearance of the single-family residential structure located at 1111 Wisconsin Avenue. I apologize. I have an error in the staff report. And the modifications include creation of an entry porch, which is going to be sized approximately 8 feet by 6 feet, connecting to a detached garage via a breezeway, installation of glass block beside the entry door, installation of hurricane-rated aluminum shutters, tongue and groove cypress vertical wood siding in the gable, reinstallation of a metal casement window, and new stucco. And the proposed modifications are reflected in the attachments. Now, one thing that I do want to just verbally add to that is the applicant is aware that for things like the block, the doors, et cetera, that they have not presented what they want to put there yet because they haven't decided. And so what they're looking for you to do is approve the design. And I could either work with the applicant for approval on those final items, the finishes. So basically the windows and doors and the columns. If you feel more comfortable having the applicant come back when they have that information, we could do that as well. So just think about that when you're making your motion, what you would like to see in regards to that. I'm going to actually just forward here so I could have the design pulled up. There we go. So you have in your packet on page 2 the current appearance of the building. One other thing I will add, and I'm sure the applicant could give you more detail about this, but the envisioned alterations right now are only going to affect the main building. So I encouraged him to come up with his total design before the board so he could get it approved. So that way in 3 months from now, if he decides he wants to proceed with what we're referring to as phase 2, he can. But what he initially plans to do immediately is the entry at that front door. So the breezeway and the detached garage would be the potential future phase 2. So, okay, having said that, so certificate of appropriateness for this, the items in the code, ordinance number 2018-57, City of St. Cloud Land Development Code, Article 3, Division 24, Historic Preservation Overlay District. The different standards that apply from the Secretary of the Interior standards are standards 5 and 9. So I'm going to read those two to you. Distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a property shall be preserved. Staff comments are the proposed modification does not adversely impact distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize the property. 9 is new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction on the same parcel of land shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. Staff's comments is the proposed addition does not destroy historic materials that characterize the property and is compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features of the property. Also from the ordinance, we have the section related to new construction and alterations. And I've got the criteria that apply here to the proposed work. So I'm going to go through them. Setting, orientation, and setbacks. Comments are the garage is situated such that it creates a continuous street edge and is in line with the existing building wall. Regarding building height, the garage height is visually compatible to the existing contributing buildings in the historic district. Regarding design styles, the garage takes its design cues from the prevailing architectural styles within the historic district. Regarding proportion of openings, the proposed window openings are visually compatible with openings in existing contributing buildings within the historic district. Relationship of rhythm of solids to voids. The relationship between solids and voids of the building is visually compatible with the surrounding buildings at street level. Rhythm of spacing along the street. The relationship with the spacing between the proposed garage and the house is compatible with the other buildings on each side of the street in that block. Relationship of materials and textures. The materials and textures of the proposed garage, as well as the modifications on the existing building, have been selected with the historic district and specifically the existing structure in mind. Roof shape. The roof shape of the proposed garage is compatible with the roof shape of the existing contributing buildings within the historic district and is consistent with the architectural style of the existing building. And size, scale, bulk, mass, and volume. The physical size, scale, bulk, mass, and volume of the proposed garage is compatible with the existing contributing buildings within the historic district at street level. And staff is recommending the HPB approve creation of an entry porch sized approximately 8 foot by 6 foot, connected to a detached garage via a breezeway, installation of hurricane-rated aluminum shutters, tongue and groove cypress vertical wood siding in the gable, reinstallation of a metal casement window, and new stucco. And just one more comment is that the recommendation for approval is based on a finding that the proposed alteration is consistent with the intent and purpose of ordinance number 2018-57 as outlined in the staff report, and specifically the proposed alterations are in character with the size, scale, massing, and design of the original building and the surrounding historic district.
Well, I'll make a motion for approval. So I will recommend that we go with staff's recommendation for the creation of an entry porch size approximately 8 by 6, connecting to a detached garage via a breezeway, installation of hurricane-rated aluminum shutters, tongue and groove cypress vertical wood siding in the gable, reinstallation of a metal casement window, and new stucco.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Discussion. I'll open it up to the members. I guess I just, pardon the architectural aspect of it, but just trying to understand the breezeway aspect of what the applicant is wanting to do, because if the garage is at the same setback as the building, if the breezeway is attached to the side of the porch, what's it attaching to in regards to the garage? If you could come up to the microphone, please, sir.
Actually, if you want to pass this around, this is where I got my inspiration.
I'm just trying to understand how the breezeway is functioning. I don't have a
Okay.
problem with what you presented.
Sure, this
And
is,
and you're Mr. Dalton?
Yes,
Oh, yes. My name's James Dalton, and I'm the resident at 1111 Wisconsin Avenue. And the way that will work is the garage will be forward of the house. Do we have the plot?
Yeah, there wasn't a site plan that showed that, but from a description, the statement
There you
was
go.
that the facade was flush, in line with the house, and that's why I was trying to understand.
Well, you can see right up here in section A, that's where the breezeway will start. It comes across in front of the house, and the garage will be,
Will be 6 feet forward of the
Exactly,
facade of
of the house,
that. So
right.
just probably want to have clarification in the motion, since the description was that the garage was going to be flush with the
the front.
front of the house. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up, because it was a trigger to me from a site planning standpoint.
Thank you for bringing that up, because the garage wall is supposed to be in line with the building. So that was my miss, Chair Clark.
No, that's the only, it was an inconsistency in this, I was trying to understand it. So the question so you're saying that the garage can't come forward of the building?
Needs to be either in line or setback.
Okay.
Is that like a city ordinance?
It's in the ordinance about the alignment of where the houses line up in relation to the house and on the street.
So that's, that would just, I don't have a problem with that there, but from a breezeway function standpoint, your breezeway would change on what's happening.
A little bit, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I can work that into my plans.
so if we approve it as the way that it's been stated, your breezeway, you're going to need to make some changes beforehand as far as function. From a standpoint architecturally and the historic element, appearance of it, I don't believe that what we're approving would be a problem.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Member Jones, please.
Yes, did anyone else have a question for Mr. Dalton before I ask my question of Ms. Stark?
Well, we're under discussion, so you can bring up whatever you like to.
Well, thank you for your courtesy. Ms. Stark, with regard to your motion, do you plan to add something to your motion to address how the other elements will be dealt with? Whether they'll be brought back to the board at a later time, or allow staff to deal with them?
Well, in this particular situation, since it isn't verbalized here, we can just add after new stucco that we give staff, in this case our historic preservationist, the authority to move forward with the alterations necessary for the breezeway.
I think it might be helpful to have that as part of the motion, verbalized in the motion to clarify it.
Are you asking me to redo it
Just
instead of just the add-on I just said?
just add on to it.
I just did that.
Why don't you just restate it and let Member Jones second it again, and then we're.
Creation
all
of an
good.
entry porch sized approximately 8 by 6 connecting to a detached garage via a breezeway. Installation of hurricane-rated aluminum shutters, tongue and groove cypress vertical wood siding in the gable. Reinstallation of a metal easement window and new stucco, with the breezeway addition being approved by staff to meet the standards. That good?
That is good.
So when we have a
Are you
motion,
seconding it?
Seconded.
and the updated motion has been seconded. All right, is there any further discussion?
Point of information,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. The frontage, is it measured from the edge of the front porch, or is it measured from the front of the house?
That would be, Christina was noting the fact that the requirement was to.
The wall.
The wall, okay,
wall's
that's what I
along
wanted
the
to
street.
clarify.
Yeah, the porch obviously can come forward to that, but the garage itself has.
And that
has
is,
to-
that's why I was wondering. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, if there's no further discussion, All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against signify likewise. All right, motion is approved.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
Flip back through my pages here. That brings us to new business item B, certificate appropriateness, major, 1004 New York Avenue. You have the floor, Christina.
Okay. The applicant is requesting approval from HPB for a certificate of appropriateness to modify all elevations. The project has a previously issued C of A for the proposed scope of work. However, the C of A has expired. I'm going to go ahead and show an image of the building. That's the location there. And I pulled this image because the current image would show it all with scaffolding, so you wouldn't get to see the building. So this is an older image, but I did that purposefully. The scope of work are exterior modifications to include new roof, windows, doors, rooftop modifications, to utilize the outdoor space for mechanical storage. Just to be clear, the utilization of that outdoor space will be for mechanical storage. So you'll see in the rendering that what you've got up there is screening to cover that mechanical, basically like air conditioning units and things like that.
You're saying what's on that, the one-story
Yes.
portion of the building? Okay, thank you.
An exterior coating to all wall surfaces, and the proposed alterations are reflected in the renderings that have been provided in your packet. Now, as far as all these roof, windows, doors, etc., you do have an additional piece of information, a letter dated April 6th from Florida Department of State, signed by Dr. Kira Lucas. And the state has provided a courtesy review of the architectural design. So I'm going to just read this into the record here because this is the formal recommendation from staff, is in alignment with Dr. Lucas's recommendation. So doors, the transom light doors as shown in the renderings are appropriate. Windows, she has stated that they would approve 1/1 single hung wood-clad black trim windows. Roof, they would approve asphalt shingle or composite shingle. 5V crimp or standing seam metal roof in matte black or charcoal has preliminary approval. And adornment, are to be no shutters, awnings, overheads, or balconies with the exception of the overhangs over the main entrances. An exterior treatment is removing necessary lime mortar and paint, repointing the brick where necessary, and filling open spaces, mesh wrapping the building, and applying new lime wash to the exterior. Any water repellent or sealant used on the structure should be approved by a professional preservationist before application. So what I just recommend is whoever decides to make the motion on this one, if they could just articulate the things that were in the state's approval, so we can be in alignment with that.
I will make a motion to approve. Do you want all of those items reread into the motion?
Yeah, the motion needs to come from
Before I do that, I just want to make a point that on the metal roof, there have been photos that have been provided, so I'm assuming at this point that that is adequate?
So that's what her reference to the preliminary approval, because she was provided with those photos. But
Okay.
at the time of creation of the staff report and putting this together, we did not have the word from her higher up, basically. So that's why it's preliminary, so I would just put the motion to align with the letter. So that way, if they come back with anything that's different, which we don't expect them to do, but we definitely want to stay in alignment with what the state is looking
Okay.
at for this.
I just know that when the building came to us originally, the metal roof was one of the things that the board was speaking to specifically. So I just want to put
Yeah,
that
so
out
this
there.
might be a good opportunity to pause and just have a general discussion with the board, because some people were not on this board when this was approved last time. So this application went before the St. Cloud Board. You all have a very general ordinance, as we've already discussed. Eventually, this ordinance is going to be upgraded, so it's a lot more clear. So there's a lot of generalities. There was no review by the state on this project. Why it's important is this is a very significant building, and we want to make sure that any of the work done to the building does not render it to be what we consider non-contributing. Especially right now, we're in the process of doing a National Register nomination for St. Cloud. We want to make sure that this building, as it stands right now, is considered contributing and that it remains contributing. That is the reason why I reached out to the state for feedback. Seeing, of course, there were certain things in the past approval, like addition of dormers, that could have actually rendered it non-contributing. The state, luckily, is willing to look past that, but they want to make sure that everything else that happens to the building is in alignment with the Secretary of the Interior standards. And that's why this is an unusual one, that they've rendered an opinion. Usually we don't reach out to the state on every staff report, but this is a significant building, and again, we want to make sure that it stays to be in contributing status. So that's why all of that interaction came to play. Do you all have any questions about that? And the other thing is that their approvals have all expired, so they have to come back to you. So we're trying to do it correctly this go around.
Just from a point of clarification, in regards to the screening on the one-story portion, did the state have that to look at the time that they were looking at, and did they make any statement in regards to what that screening could or could not be?
So the renderings that you have in front of you are the renderings that the state based this letter on.
Okay. So what that looks like is they're actually planters that are not, they may be tied to the roof itself, but they're not becoming a physical part of the facade.
Not intended to be.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I will make a motion to approve based on Dr. Lucas's recommendations. The doors, the transom light doors as described and shown in the renderings dated 4/5/2022 are appropriate. Windows 1/1 single hung wood-clad lag trim windows are appropriate. Roof, asphalt shingle or composite shingle roof is appropriate. 5V crimp or standing seam metal roof in matte black or charcoal preliminarily approved upon the condition that the proof of previous historical metal roof is provided. This proof should be provided to the City of St. Cloud's Historic Preservation Board and Preservation Consultant Christine Dalton. Adornment, no shutters, awnings, overhangs, or balconies with the exception of the overhangs over the main entrances. Exterior treatment, removing necessary lime mortar and paint, pointing brick where necessary, infilling open spaces, mesh wrapping the building, applying new lime wash to the exterior, all approved. Any water repellent or sealant used on the structure should be approved by professional preservationists before application.
Were you going to go through the rest of the suggested motion? You kind of started with it, jumped over to the letter.
Well, okay, but
I mean, because it doesn't indicate anything in regards to the ordinance or article. That's why I was wanting to know. Otherwise, it's, motion's been made and open to seconding.
I don't really know where the ordinance is. Is
It's
it the
on-
2018-57?
It's on page 4 of
Page 4.
9.
Okay, consistent with the purpose of intent of ordinance number 2018-57, City of St. Cloud Land Development Code, Article 3, Division 24, Historic Preservation Overlay, HPO District Section 3.24.8, and complies with the requirements outlined in ordinance number 2018-57 as outlined in the staff report, specifically the proposed handicap ramp.
No.
Not,
That's something
why is that in there?
No,
It's the motion below that, the suggested motion below that, the language there.
Well, don't confuse the issue.
I'm trying to clarify
So
the
there you
issue.
go. There's the motion without the last sentence.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
second.
I have a second by Member Jones. Floor is now open for staff discussion, for member discussion.
If I recall when this came up before, are they still raising the roof? Or is
Yeah,
that-
that's already been done.
It's already been done, okay.
Yep. So basically, we're just clarifying some additional points to make sure that we're staying, keeping the building in its historic form.
Thank you.
The rendering that you have in front of you, this is what the roof looks like now, but the roof only has its sheathing on it. It does not have its final material. So its finished material still needs to be installed.
Thank you.
All right. Any other further discussion? on that, All right, if not, we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed likewise? All right, the motion has been passed. Is there any further discussion in regards to anything, Christina, that we need to address?
The applicant wants to speak.
Please, if the applicant can come forward if you'd like.
Hi, my name is Mateo Hodo. I am the project manager for the St. Cloud Hotel, and I'm the one that started this whole process, and I've been communicating with Dr. Lucas a lot.
Okay.
And there is something there where she couldn't feel comfortable into signing off, but she asked me that if I asked the board and the board approved it, she would be okay with it. And we had a long discussion because she wrote her doctorate thesis on this exact same thing that I'm actually asking you for. When the building was first built in 1909, I found proof that its windows were black 2/2 light, not 1/1 light, and they're rendered with 2/2 light as it was in 1909. Now, by guidelines that she has to follow, she cannot approve that because we're going past 1910. So, which it was rebuilt from the fire, which it burned down to the ground and it got rebuilt again. Now, this is something to where the guidelines are very strict for them, but this is something to where I feel the building wants, and I feel that the building wants it so that it can actually share the life of it that it had prior to the fire. And this is the aspect that would actually bring that into conversation with anyone that visits it. And I feel that it's very important to it and to me. And if you could make a motion to approve that, I would be gladly honored, and I think so would be the hotel.
Okay, so you're asking us to make a motion on a verbal presentation, not anything that's written, and you're not presenting us what the 1/1 versus the 2/1 and the historic photo that you're basing off of. Is that correct? Because there's nothing in the report or the request that was specific to that. And so from a standpoint of our guidelines and following to make sure that we're kept in historical guideline, we've done that. You've got the ability to move forward. If you have a specific element, like, because if we're only talking about the window change, then I think that that's something that you could come back specifically to those elements, and that gives staff the chance to look at it from a standpoint of what you're presenting historically, what you're asking us to do, and then that gives us something that we can actually look at to discuss and to do that. I think that right now, with the fact that you've got the approval for moving forward, you're at least not being held up from a standpoint of being able to continue work.
The only thing that it would hold up is the windows.
Is the time frame for the windows because of that, and I
Because it would
understand.
matter which one.
So what if we have an additional motion where staff can make the decision on the 1/over versus the 2/over if in fact Dr. Lucas approves that?
Based on the proof that he,
So I provided that proof. Christine, do we have any?
I can only submit to you what I received from the state, and that's the letter that I have in front of you.
Correct.
I can follow up one more time with the state and see if they are willing to give an additional letter. I think what Mateo is asking is that you all consider the 2/2 that are in the renderings, but that's why I specifically provided the letter, because the 2/2s are shown in the renderings, but we want to stick with what was recommended from the state.
Correct, and
Of
that's,
course, the board does not have to go with the state's recommendation. Let me be very clear about this. You are not obligated to vote per this letter. It is just my strong recommendation, and I explained to you the whole reason why I reached out to the state and the consideration about keeping the building in its contributing status and all of that. We're trying to avoid any changes that might render it non-contributing. So if you want to do something in your motion that allows me the flexibility to continue to work with the state to get a determination, but I don't feel comfortable personally approving 2/2 in the absence of an opinion from the state.
Right, I agree.
So if what that means is if I don't get such opinion from the state, I would have to bring it back to you if the applicant wanted to pursue that further.
Well, the reality of the situation is if we don't make some kind of statement tonight, it delays him the ability to order it on a timely
Right.
basis.
Yes.
And we don't
Understood.
want any more delays.
So I'll make a motion that we give Christine the authority to work with Dr. Lucas on the 2-over versus the 1-over. If that is approved, then we can move forward and she will make that determination.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second,
We have a second by Member Jones. Any further discussion?
just a question of Christine. Has the state been provided the evidence about the 2/2?
Yeah, so the building, there was actually an earlier St. Cloud Hotel.
Oh, I'm aware. I'm
know that you
aware
are
of all
aware
the
of that.
history.
Yes.
And so the earlier St. Cloud Hotel, which completely burnt to the ground, had 2/2 windows.
Right.
This current St. Cloud Hotel did not have 2/2 windows. And so the position on the state is that building was gone. There's no more of that building. It's not there. So photographic evidence of a building that's no longer standing is not useful for this purpose, is basically the opinion, because it doesn't relate to this building. It relates to an earlier building on the site, but not specifically to this building. So the position is, from photographic evidence, it appears that the building has always had 1/1 windows. And so to say consistent with the windows that the building has had in its history, that 1/1 windows are appropriate.
I'm going to be quiet.
You seconded the motion. What are you being quiet now for? Any other further discussion from any other members?
You know why.
So if we did the other windows because it technically was from the other building, could that change of windows make it non-contributing?
There's potential that that could impact it.
Yes, and that's a
Windows
concern.
are considered to be a very character-defining feature.
And that's a concern from a standpoint if we're trying to make this
Yeah.
part of the overall fabric of our historic preservation in the city.
I will say the state's already conceded on the roof, because that change with the addition of the dormers is something that is a gray area, but could have knocked it into non-contributing, because that is a big alteration to the building. So they've already given.
They've allocated that change would not knock it out of being non-conforming, but if we
After-
continue making
After 2
other
months of
elements, it could be.
work, yes.
Well,
I mean-
and if I recall, that particular change, our board had quite a lengthy discussion as well with,
I
so.
don't have a problem with trying to petition the state further just to get a clarification if they're willing to change the position.
Yeah.
But my position would be that I want to maintain the integrity of the overall district. So right now, I would be prone to stay to the 1/1 as opposed to the 2/, in the event that the 2/, would knock it out of being able to be considered. Yeah, my brains are going here. You know what? I'm assuming everybody knows where I'm going with that, but I mean that's kind of my position on that. But from a standpoint, I don't have a problem with pursuing this further with the state.
Neither do I.
All right. Any other comments?
May I speak one more?
Yes, Mateo.
I have, I feel that I am this building's voice, and I must advocate for it in a way that speaks through me what it wants to say. And I feel that all of it, it's its history. And I feel that the time of significance, it's actually right now, because it was on the verge of 30 days from being gone again. And we had to go to the extent of pouring in new footers all the way to the roof to actually preserve the structure. So it was quite extensive, and the reason why the state has been so forgiving in all of that, because of how significant this time now is to the time when it burned again from the fire. And it's something that it's really important to it, and I must speak for it as much as I can. And I will speak to it to any level or to wherever I have to go. But I appreciate all of your consideration into helping me pursue this further. But I'm I want this building to be nationally recognized, and with it, I also want to show how interconnected the times are, how interconnected we all are as human beings, and how history keeps repeating itself, and how sometimes we can change the curse.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your input.
I have just one more
Member
thing
Jones?
I have to say. After Hurricane Irma, we had a lot of water damage at the Heritage Museum, and they had to replace all the windows in that building. Now, they had to bring in a special team to do it, and I think they replaced them to where they were like the original windows, but I don't know if they were exactly the same. Now, what I don't understand, Miss Dalton keeps talking about after the building burned down and they rebuilt the building, it wasn't the same building anymore. Well, of course it wasn't the same building. But when they rebuilt it, they should have put the same type of windows that were in it when it burned down.
Except there was no historic preservation criteria at that time.
It was quite a bit before our time.
I can understand your point on that. That's,
No, I am serious as a heart attack. They should have put the original windows back in it.
yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but, you know, just as in construction today, when we go to design and rebuild something in today's market, change orders happen, you know. What's actually available at the time, you know, may not be exactly what you want. And unfortunately, where the state's position is, the one over the one is what was available, and that's what was done, and that's what establishes this historic element of this building at that time period. So what they're saying is the building that was a previous time period disappeared, so you can't apply a previous time period to this building, that's all.
Well, we'll have to remember that the next time that they want something done a particular way. I'm going to be quiet because my blood pressure is going up.
Don't raise your blood pressure, please, because we're having a discussion that actually is going to benefit, you know,
And-
if we move forward in approval.
Keep
It's going to be
fighting.
a benefit.
Thank
So,
you.
if there's no other further discussion on it, we'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion to allow staff to work with the applicant by petitioning the state to reconsider the 2/2 windows signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed likewise. Motion passes. Christina Mateo, it looks like you'll be working together a little bit longer. I didn't think it was, but I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Mateo. All right. Well, I flipped back to the workshop agenda. I'm like, going, why am I doing this again? So at this time, there is no other further new business unless you've got something you're throwing out, pulling out of your pocket?
No.
Okay. So we will open the floor for public comment. Is there any one in the public here today that wishes to speak? All right.
Nobody?
Nobody knows. Yes, I can't sing anymore, sorry.
Richard?
Yes.
As long as it's not on this.
I've been working on this the past 3 years, and I've really gotten to know your community, and you have such a beautiful community here. I've met some of the most wonderful human beings I've ever seen, and I absolutely love your community. I really do. And I'm fighting so much to bring this back to life because I know that your community wants it a lot, and I know that the building can come back to life, and I know that it can do for you what it once did. And that this community, what it exists today, it's actually a foundation of that. And it was done on, and it was set on improper foundation, and it has to be set right. And from now on, I would like to see the curse change for it to be right on every aspect of your community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
We
it.
appreciate your passion. Thank you very much.
All right, then we'll close the public comment and go to individual board comments, starting with Member Day. Did you have any comments that you needed to bring up or wish to bring up this evening?
None.
You don't have to, I'm just asking if you did.
No comment. at
Member
this time.
Estelle?
Thank you.
Our new member, Member Campbell. Welcome, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I should have said this at the beginning of the meeting. Can we have Member Campbell introduce herself?
All right, so you're going to have a comment. If you would, please comment on who you are and,
My name is Patrice Campbell. I've lived in St. Cloud since, off and on since the late 60s. My dad retired from the Air Force, and we moved down here. I'm married. I met my husband at the lakefront. I always cry when I see you. In 72, when you could drive on the lakefront. And we got married in 74 at the Lutheran Church on Louisiana. And over time, we stayed in Central Florida, came back and purchased a beautiful home at 402 Florida, and have been loving on it for 17 years. But I am thrilled to be on this board. I love the city of St. Cloud. So thank you so much for having me.
thank you.
Thank you.
We
Welcome.
appreciate your stepping up and serving. Member Bryant?
First of all, welcome to the board.
Thank you.
I missed a little bit of the workshop, but looking over the brochure, it's exactly what we had talked about, so good job. Thanks. I really think it's awesome.
Good, I'm glad.
Thank you. Member Stark?
Nope, I'm good.
Member Horning?
Oh, yes, I have a comment. Last week, we were honored at the Heritage Museum to have a video crew come in from South Florida. They're making a documentary on the two lady architects who designed our building. So they also went to Fisk Funeral Home, People's Bank, several buildings up in Orlando that the ladies had designed. And so they took pictures inside and outside, and I did part of the script, which was really interesting. They had the script already written, I just had to read my 2 paragraphs. That
They
was
pay
all.
you scale at least?
Yes.
Yeah, nothing.
So that was pretty exciting to have them come. It was through a grant from the Florida Humanities Council. And it was an organization in Orlando which got the grant, so to recognize these women. And then, just the other day, our volunteers noticed that somebody was standing outside with another video camera. And so they went outside to see, what was going on. And this was a crew from Disney. And Disney was coming around filming sites where tourists would like to come. And so they came to the museum to see the outside, and of course our volunteers invited them to come inside. And so people in there explained about the wooden water pipe that we have and some of the other things, the other archive, right, that's not what I meant to say,
Architecture, yep.
I can't even say it anymore. Anyway, I've said it so many times in my lifetime, I can't even, artifacts that we have in there. So anyway, we've been really pleased to add to the history, of St. Cloud with these other organizations and so forth.
Great.
So,
Love the exposure. It's a great thing. Member Jones?
Well, let's see if I have any wind left.
As long as your blood pressure's back down.
It is, but I am really distressed that a state agency can be so inflexible about something like these windows and could maybe jeopardize our whole historic district. I feel like they hold us hostage.
They're also going by the national guidelines as well. So,
Yes, I
it's not-
understand.
It's not just the state.
I know,
mean,
I understand about the national guidelines, but when I think about the national guidelines, national has so many places they have to monitor. We're just a little drop in the bucket. It's state that gets their knickers in the wad.
Well,
But-
that's
but-
why we also have the authority to
Yeah,
overrule
and,
it.
and we do have that authority, but also we also understand that from a standpoint of if there's grant money and there's things that are going to happen, that grant money generally comes down to us. We're not generating it here.
But
so,
sometimes,
so-
to do the right thing,
Well,
we may have to just say, take the risk.
And I'm not saying that's not necessarily something in the future that may need to happen, but I mean, from a standpoint of us as we're trying to establish and get our district really in place, get everything in place, sometimes you have these growing pains, and you're not going to always get to have the exact thing that you want at the time. But looking into the long term, maybe it's something that can happen.
I'll be quiet, but you obviously
Understand.
know I'm distressed.
I understand your distress.
I want to clarify something.
I'm
though.
ready to go to Tallahassee.
Well, at least wait till we finish the meeting.
Let me clarify something, though. This would not in any way jeopardize the National Register District. What it would do is potentially put this building as being non-contributing to that district. So it does not jeopardize the district in any way, but it can have an impact to that building. Why that's important and why I reached out to the state is because if it is considered non-contributing, then it will not be eligible for future grant funding. It will not be eligible for what's called the federal rehabilitation tax credit. So I'm trying to protect the interests of the building. If we make the decisions solely at the local level, that's fine, and you all have complete authority to do that. But I didn't want to have a decision of the board in the future come back to be problematic, where if the federal rehab tax credit were to be pursued or a grant were to be pursued, that change would actually put them out of the running for that. So that was me acting out of an abundance of caution and inviting the state to comment, not the other way around.
And it preserves the interest of the current owner as well, just because of the fact that, Mateo, your building owner, may actually want to pursue that, and we wouldn't want to just on one item. I understand the emotional aspect of it. I understand the visual aspect of how that speaks to you, but we want you to still be able to have the tools from the state or from the federal level for you to be able to in the event. And I hope that you and the state can come to an agreement that doesn't take that away. But that's what's going to happen here in the future, and I don't want to belabor it this evening.
We have been working very closely
Yep.
for 2 months, so
And-
I think, and we have very good communication. So Mateo is aware of that, but of course he's going to advocate for what he would like to
As he
see.
should.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
from an emotional standpoint, he's, even though he doesn't own the building, he's developed ownership, if you will, emotionally.
Absolutely.
I do the same thing with things that I design, so I can understand that perfectly well.
They're alive. They're just as much alive as you and I, and they serve a purpose, and they do their purpose, and especially if that's set right from the heart, it will vibrate that energy throughout everybody that sees it. And it's very important for the building, and it's very important for me to at least advocate that, and advocate to the point to where the state can actually hear how far it was gone, to what point we went to actually bring it back, and how significant this time period is to allow those modifications, because at the end of the day, it's been vacant over 20 years, so it's had no life for over 20 years. It's had no windows really for over 20 years, and we can make a small.
Understood. And like I said, I hope that, the state can see that and maybe come to it. Before we wrap up, Member Bryan, you said you had one other thing you wanted to bring up.
No, I was just going to say, would that not be something as we're going forward, that once we work on the design standards for our city and our town, that eventually will correct itself, because we're going to work with the state as well to, after
Correct.
we've done them, that
As
they're gonna
we
approve
get
them, so it
as
will
we get the
eventually
design
work.
standards in place, that will help us
Yeah,
and make
and
things a
not
little easier
just
as
that.
well.
Let me give you another example of something that you might not be aware of, but that I'm working on right now. The intake process, the application, for example. There's information that they have to fill in on the application that's irrelevant. But then there's information that I really need as a reviewer that's not there. And so we take an application in, and then I go to review it, and there's all these missing things. So then I got to kick it back to the applicant. So, of course, immediately, this situation where this is a pain. And with the example with Mr. Dalton's application tonight, had I had a site plan that showed where those were located, I would have caught that. But I didn't catch that because it wasn't in the packet. Why wasn't it in the packet? It's not required to be. And so right now what I'm doing is I'm actually changing the applications and the submittal requirements so that we don't have mistakes like that. Because one, it's embarrassing for me, right? In a meeting to have something, oh, oops, I didn't catch that. But it's also should be something that when the applicant submits, at the point of submittal, they should already know what the expectation is instead of now us picking up the phone or sending an email like, we need this and then we need that. And so there's other things that I'm working on that I'm not just coming up and telling you each and every time because it's kind of unnecessary. But there are things, and I did tell you all when I first started working with you in October, is we're just going to have some hiccups along the way, but that's part of the growth process, and that's actually part of getting you all to where you need to be. So that application update is going to be coming to you probably, I'm hoping in May, if not in June the latest. But also internally, working with building department and intake and how things go into a tracking system and everything, we're trying to work through those things. So we're trying to make it a very friendly process for property owners and applicants to go through instead of a back and forth process that frustrates everybody. So hopefully these different things will work out over time. And I hope you're not going to go up to Tallahassee, Member Jones.
Well,
That was all me.
I would like
will
to
say
make
that was
a
me.
statement to that, though. Because prior to us even having a historic preservation board, Main Street was working with most of the historic information that was being, given to anyone. And honestly, I don't think, not everything the state does is perfect, just like not everything we do will be perfect. And there are times to have discussions with them, but on the other hand, they are a huge resource, and they have helped a lot in our community that people have no idea about, because it's just been done behind the scenes. As a matter of fact, when things first started with Mateo and he took over the hotel and things were hugely wrong, I called on the state, and they had a state architect come in and tour the building and tell us what their opinion was at the time. And the city wanted to give a certificate of demolition. And because the state architect came in and did that with me, we stopped that. So you want to be mindful of when we want to hear and when we don't want to hear. So I'm just going to lay that out there.
All right, thank
I
you.
was just being angry. I am not going to tell.
We're going to take you out back and
Note to
spank you
Stephanie,
next.
bring stress ball for Member Day. I said note to Stephanie to bring a stress ball for you for the next meeting, which, by the way, is the next item on the agenda, which is the information for next meeting, which is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 at 6 o'clock. So our next historic preservation public meeting is then. Our workshop, obviously, which I was not into attendance today, is at 5 o'clock that same day. And if there's nothing else further, we will adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.